A very good afternoon to all. Welcoming all to the second episode of The Essential Conversation, where enterprise leaders discuss what really matters. Today's discussion challenges a common assumption. Should migration be viewed as a one-time project or as an organizational capability? The organizations that succeed are often not the ones with the biggest budgets or newest technologies. They are the ones that develop repeatable migration frameworks, governance models, and operational readiness. Today, we have an esteemed list of speakers spanning across agrochemicals and specialty chemicals industry and cybersecurity tech leaders, comprising of Mr. Kashinath, who heads the global IT infrastructure at UPL, or which is formerly known as United Phosphorus Limited, which is the fifth largest generic agrochemicals company globally. He brings the industry perspective on what expectations do the industry have during migration activities. We also have Mr. Steve, who's the VP for the APJ region for SMB sales at OpenText Cybersecurity. He brings the OEM perspective, Carbonite being our strategic partner to NxtGen for migration activities. This conversation will be moderated by Rajesh, who's the Chief Digital Officer at NxtGen, who leads the digital transformation initiatives, aligns the digital strategy with business goals, and helps the NxtGen create new revenue streams and competitive advantage. Post that, we have Avyaya. So while Rajesh drives NxtGen's digital vision, Avyaya helps make that vision a reality. As the head of NxtGen's cloud business, he enables NxtGen to build and operate secure, scalable, and future-ready public and private cloud environments. So the success of your cloud journey is defined not by where you land, but by how you migrate. With that, let's begin episode 2 of the Essential Conversation. I request Mr. Kashinath, Steve, and Rajesh to take over. Over to you, Rajesh.
Thank you, Sudhir. I think this is very exciting in terms of looking at the biggest pain point of the industry called migrations. I think till date, everybody which has undergone the migration has seen this drill being very reactive, risky, and most of the times exhausting. But the organizations which we actually see successfully take this to the next level are not the winners, but they actually drive this as a strategic capacity or capability. Now we want to actually look at how this entire journey from playbooks, SOPs, managing the risk, or developing the skills to maneuver these migrations, how do they measure, and then kind of sum it up in terms of looking at that as a impact of AI onto migrations, the tools, enhancements, and all that. So we have these two gentlemen who have kind of joined, Kashinath and Steve. I think Kashinath looks at from an industry enterprise perspective. Steve would look at as an industry perspective, so that he brings in a very wide range of kind of expertise into this, and this conversation then becomes far more easier in that context. So Kashinath, I wanted to kind of start with you in terms of every enterprise. They actually reach ad hoc migration decision, a breaking point where the migrations keep coming because the new technologies come in, you migrate databases, you migrate applications, you migrate on cloud instances. And this entire playbook actually, kind of does initiate an impactful change onto the organization. So how do you handle that in UPL?
Yeah, first of all, good afternoon, everyone. And thanks, Rajesh and Sudhir and Jolly and everyone for this essential conversation, because it's a very important topic, as also Sudhir mentioned, right? So in UPL or in any other organization for that matter I work with, okay, so these decisions are not ad hoc decisions, okay, in any organization wherever I work, because what happens is these decisions goes on application by application, okay, as per the business needs, right? So some application stays on premise, some applications goes on premise. I'm talking about co-location, like NxtGen, for example, right? Some applications goes onto a cloud. Okay, so it is OEM specific, integration specific, latency specific. So all these points, all these criteria needs to be considered because business is at the core, right? The data is also at the core. Okay, so these decisions are not ad hoc. Second, if you ask me about the breaking point, right? So in UPL, what happened is I joined like 2.5 years back now, but we were in the data center for 7 years, 7+ years. Okay, the hardware is end of life, end of support. Okay, old technology, right? Operating system is at non-supportive level, and we all know, right? The virtualization platform cost is touching the sky, right? So considering all these platforms, so these are say kind of a break point for us, which and of course the managed services partners inefficiencies and operational frictions and so on and so forth. So these were some of the breaking points where we decided to migrate to the next gen data center or to the newest technology.
No, that is great. Just a follow-up question, Kashinath.
Yeah, please.
Till Steve comes on. I think whatever learnings we have in terms of our own, kind of experiences and all that, how do you look at this as a, kind of a strategic advantage where you have done some kind of a right guardrails so that the speed and risk management are balanced? Because compliances will hold on certain kind of, innovations. While you are migrating certain things, there are risks, like you just mentioned, that non-compatible operating systems and all that. So what is the flux point where you balance this risk and speed? What's your experience?
Yeah, I think this is a great question because the guardrails are very important, right? And you have to manage the speed and the risk. So for some organizations, it's like trade-off, speed and risk. Okay. But no, we consciously manage, we have constantly put, I would say, the 4 or 5 guardrails, okay, so that our risks and the risk are taken care of. While we maintain the speed, the risk is also taken care of, and of course, the NxtGen team also supported in the same. So, if I talk about the guardrails, especially the first guardrails is the governance, okay, and also Sudhir also started the governance point. So there were multi-layered governance, I would say, okay. The first is at the technical governance. Okay. Then there is a service delivery layer of governance. And then there is at my level, there is a executive governance. So the governance is there not to break or not to slow down the migration or the complete process. It is for ease of approvals, for giving approvals immediately, understand the situations, so and so move fast, okay, and understand the risk, okay, at the say execution level, service delivery level, or at the senior level, right, executive level. So the governance is very very important when it comes to the migration. The second point is the change control, okay, because you are changing and it's a big change, trust me, okay, because we don't want business risk, business disruptions, right? So my business team shouldn't know that yesterday they were in at X location and tomorrow they are going to the Y location, right? So they should not. So the control, change control was very important. So we have different playbooks created, okay. There are multiple people involved, like there are OEMs involved because we have different applications. So there are OEMs involved. There are my application team is involved, infrastructure team. Within infrastructure, there's a data center network team. So there are, and of course the partner like NextGen. So these teams are involved in every change control board meetings, documentations. So we were very clear that uh, what are we moving and when are we moving, right? So change control is very important. Second is on the transition part. So when actual transition happens, right? So the dev systems moves first, the quality systems moves first, right? And risks are taken care of, right? So teams are there for testing. So all these guardrails are put at a place. And the last and very important is the security, right? So security we have not added afterwards, right? Security is embedded during all this process. The security is embedded. We have a ASB board, like architecture and security control board. Okay, so every application before moving is passed through that green channel, right? So security is completely embedded from day one during this migration. So these are the four guardrails we have put for the smooth migration so that it happened fast and risks are also taken care of.
This is fantastic, Kashinath. I think you gave us a very nice all-round kind of a perspective. Still, I'll come to Steve now. Steve, you've seen enterprise being a very steady state, risk averse kind of a business. What do you look at when you have multiple customers, when you are actually enabling this migration? From your point of view, how do you, kind of take this customers' cloud journeys together in terms of migrations, and how do you look at it from a bigger this thing where one single playbook might not be, as effective?
Yep. No, thank you very much, Rajesh, and yeah, always a pleasure to be with you on these sessions. Thank you, Kashinath and Sudhir and the team at NxtGen. And thank you very much for the opportunity to be with you here today. So, look, to really hone in on your question, I think the goal isn't about migration at scale. The goal is essentially how do we deliver a business outcome at scale? We at OpenText, we don't develop a playbook for every customer. That's impracticable and it's impossible. What we do is we focus on building a repeatable framework that adapts to every customer's business priorities. So when you look at migration, one of the biggest misconceptions is that it's a technology problem. Well, it actually is not a technology problem. It's a business problem. So every customer is on a journey. So what we want to do is understand where those customers are at on their journey. Is it cost optimization? Is it data sovereignty? Is it about an AI initiative? Are they exiting VMware? Is there a regulatory requirement such as DPDP Act in India? Or is it something that they're looking towards, maybe cloud? So what we've learned is that you can't build 100 different playbooks for 100 different customers. What you got to do is you got to look at a repeatable framework that you can flex around each of the customer's business priorities. So really, the approach that we take is that we standardize the process, but personalize the execution. And when you look at the framework, that's consistent. So when we talk about migration, there's multiple steps. It's about assessing the risk and business impact. It's prioritizing the workloads that you're going to migrate, replication and validation. Then there's the cutover process. Then there's the optimization and modernization of the target platform. And what we find in all of this framework is that what changes is the customer's pace, their risk tolerance, the compliance requirements, as I mentioned, depending on the country that you're doing this, and the business objective. And whether the customer's moving from VMware, whether they're consolidating a data center, or they're migrating into NxtGen, or looking at a multi-cloud strategy that encompasses NxtGen and AWS or potentially something else, the migration process becomes predictable, repeatable, and low risk. So from an executive perspective, when we talk to a C-level exec, the KPI is really simple. It isn't how many servers we moved or how many servers we migrated. The KPI is whether the business achieved its objective with minimal disruption. Goes back to what I said at the start. The goal is about delivering a business outcome at scale, and that's where the KPI should be as well. So what we find with the customers that we engage with, they're most successful when they don't treat migration as a project. It's not a project. It's a capability. They build migration capability into their operating model so then that they can respond quickly to the changing business requirements.
Well, it's again, just to play a devil's advocate, you manufacture a car and sell it to a customer and customer drives it. So you developed a tool, you've given it to the customer. How efficiently and without disruption does he use it? So what's your thought about, how do you guide them in terms of how this process has to be done? There are some best practices that organizations are learning on themselves, but you bring an industry perspective. So what can go wrong and what can go right?
Okay, so in terms of that's a great question, Rajesh, and I honor your question. When you look at the industry, okay, that we operate in, this industry has fundamentally changed, and it continues to change, and it's fundamentally changed in terms of how it approaches migration. You know, when you think about migrations, historically, migrations were viewed as high risk projects. You know, businesses think about downtime, they think about complexity. I need people that understand migration. There's an operational disruption as well, and there's also the uncertainty when we talk about migration around the outcome. So what's changed? We're seeing today businesses are leveraging modern migration technologies such as Carbonite to remove much of that risk and turn migrations again into a repeatable business process, not a technology process, a repeatable business process. So, you know, a great example that you also raised in that question is we talk about VMware exit strategies, right? So there's a lot of businesses that are on VMware, they want to get out because of rising costs of hardware or maintenance or whatever the issue is. The conversation really isn't about leaving VMware. It's about giving the organizations the flexibility to move to where it makes business sense, whether that's NxtGen Cloud or, as I mentioned before, a multi-cloud strategy, another hypervisor, et cetera, et cetera. So when we talk to a CIO, it isn't about moving the workload. It's basically about maintaining business continuity whilst doing the migration. And that's where I think today the modern migration platforms have changed the game. You know, when we talk about Carbonite, we look at, you know, technologies such as real-time replication, automation, non-disruptive testing. We can test during business hours with no downtime. Organizations can really create a synchronized live environment. They can copy applications and workloads around. They can validate the target environments even before the cutover process. So that's a real benefit when you think about transitioning from one system to another. When we talk about downtime, these days we talk about downtime in terms of minutes, not hours or days. So the key shift in terms of what we see is that migration is no longer a lift and shift or a rip and replace exercise. It's become a structured, repeatable, and low-risk business process. And that's something that we have been doing at OpenText. You know, we talk about the Carbonite tool set. We've been helping our customers through these transitions for more than 35 years. It's something that we've encountered. We've seen every major infrastructure shift. You could probably tell why I've got a few grey hairs here, from physical to virtual to cloud. And now we talk about, you know, clouds, NxtGen Cloud, your environment, multi-clouds, and enabling our customers to move to environments that are AI ready. So I guess really to summarize it, what we find is it's not about buying a migration tool. It's a business process. It's about confidence. You want confidence that your data remains protected. You want confidence that the business is operational, and you want confidence that you're making a strategic move when you exit VMware, for example, that you can do that without introducing unnecessary risk.
I think that's a great perspective, Steve. So, you know, you and me both are having gray hairs with us. We go back decade for the, you know, kind of purpose of experience. The disruptions or the migrations that we used to see 2 decades ago are very, very planned, once in a year kind of thing. Now, what has happened is every part of the technology and the technology stack that you operate on is changing. So you move applications. I remember the era from physical to virtual P2V kind of, you know, things were very much common that time, but they were not being done as regular as what we are doing today in terms of moving to microservices, doing OpenShift containers. We are bringing certain new, you know, kind of technologies, open source technologies to this. So this is making more complex. And as you rightly said, you use a tool that is actually baked to do this with automation, a proper rollback, even if a migration is not successful because of external dependencies. This is very, very, very vital. Let me go back to Kashinath. Kashinath, so you have a beautiful car which is manufactured and given to you, but you need to drive it. So how do you develop those skills with your own teams in terms of empowering them to do this migration? Because it is a strategic capability now. It is no longer a project.
Yeah. It's a very critical point you taken out, Rajesh. And before that, I completely agree with Steve and you that it's not no more a technology migration or a data center migration. I would say it's a business migration, right? And it's no disruption. And trust me, when we moved, there was no disruption at all. Some of the application team even were not aware that their application has moved from X location to Y location. So it's a live example, and it's very common nowadays because in last uh, 2 months, I have again moved my two of the data centers at the global level to cloud, right? So it's very common nowadays, the migration without business disruption. So
So
it's
how
all
do
about
you
business.
measure?
Yeah,
Sorry. How do
correct.
you
So
measure this
coming to
out?
the question, yeah. So coming to your question, so it's very important to develop the internal muscle. So what we did here is so we have not outsourced the thinking, okay? Because we know our business. My team knows the business, okay, and we also got to know the business more during migration, right? It is as complex as my SAP APO system, my advanced planning, which is a very any for any organization, the planning system, right? So it's in SAP and it was in HP UX. So the migration of that first to Linux and then to NxtGen data center. So and thanks to the NxtGen team also. But again, so we have not only taken care of the execution internally, but also the thinking. So the complete design, okay, the architecture, everything has been done by the UPL internal team, of course, with the help of some like teams like NextGen or some application team and so on and so forth. But the ownership completely lies with the UPL team. We have not outsourced it. Okay, that was the first part. Second thing is the documentation. So we have not controlled ourselves or restricted ourselves only to the documentation part. So we have also done the testing, live testing, okay, before we actually migrate. Okay, so we were completely ready from the perspective of migration internally. Okay, so we are not dependent completely on our partners. So that's how that muscles has been strengthened internally, right? And the tool has been tested. The tool is really beautiful, right? The tool has been tested. The security, everything OEM has been, as I said earlier, the OEMs are completely part of the migration. The complete strategy has been formed, right? And then we started the migration. So our internal team was completely on top of it.
I like this. I think preparedness,
Yes,
accountability, testing responsibly. When you
correct.
own that entire process, life becomes
Exactly.
more easier because it is complex. You have dependencies on certain things that you can't even influence. Say,
Yes,
compatibility between UI, UX to Linux. It
correct.
itself is, though both are flavors of Linux, it is very risky in terms of doing that.
It is,
So,
yeah.
so what depth we are going through in terms of the IT folks, how does business measure that with cost and benefits? And is there any expectation that you have seen business putting onto you other than the continuity?
Yes, the cost and time are very, but they are taken, but that is not measured, if you ask me honestly, because they are expecting that when you are migrating it, okay, so the time is taken care of, so there is no business disruption and cost, it will be a cost effective. So those are given, right? So not, but again, as I said, the business continuity is again very important. So zero disruption or very less disruption. As you said, it's in minutes, few minutes. Okay, if it is at all there. Second is your architecture scalability and the flexibility, right?
Mm.
See, I cannot go to business again after 6 months and say I need X dollars because you are putting 10 more applications or 5 more applications, right? Or I cannot put this system because of the X operating system or Y technology, right? So the scalability is and the architecture perspective we have to take care of. Again, the operational efficiency for my internal teams and for the partners. right? So the operational efficiency is very, very important. It cannot be complex. Security and the compliance posture, right? Because we are audited. Okay, when we are a global organization. Okay, so there are a lot of regulations and there are a lot of audits happens from the entire globe, be it Europe or Americas or Brazil, whatever. So we have to be very cognizant about the security and the compliance posture, right? So these are some of the things which we have convinced business that these are the things which we are going to take care of, right? Uh, that's why. So they are out now at peace that they are in right hand internally as well as externally.
One of the points you mentioned in terms of not going back to them after 6 months asking certain things. So how do you future proof? Because technology is so much changing. Are you not worried that your current choices would get into a technical debt later? Maybe.
No. See, at least for say 10 years, okay, and I will leave it to Avyaya because we have discussed a lot with him before migration as well. So we are not thinking from the perspective of the future, the infrastructure first, right? We are thinking from the perspective of the future. Okay, so we are not thinking that okay, let me get buy this or lease this infrastructure so I am covered. I thought that what is my future, right? What is my future for next 3 years or 5 years, right? Which technology I will need or which applications I'm going to have. Mota-moti, we cannot be pinpointing toward it for next 3 years or 5 years, but so future first is our uh, uh, point that we will have to take care of. Data is also at the core nowadays because we are going towards the AI and all that. So my data is at the core. So accessibility of the data, security of the data, right? The workloads which I am putting in. Okay. So all these points are the platform, right? I am putting it on which platform, right? OpenText and all that. Okay, governance, security. So all these points are been considered to ensure that it is not going to be a technical debt in next 3 or 5 years, for that matter. I'm not sure about 10 years, but next 3 to 5 years, it should not be a technical debt. That is taken care of.
I'm so happy to see a well-informed organization and a successful leader like you taking, cognizance of this 360-degree, because a lot of times you've seen security compliance are taking backseat, but if you carry it with the process and consider it is good. I'll come back to you, Steve. This is probably a closing question for you. How has AI impacted the tools? How do you see this shift which is happening because of the AI? That less manpower, more automation, and kind of orchestrating both things, because we need human governance after all in terms of right or wrongs, in terms of ethically correct things. So how do you kind of what's your view? It's an open question. Obviously, we wanted to hear from you.
Yeah, good question, Rajesh. I was waiting for the AI question. There you go. Look, I think the summary for me when you think about AI, and I'll touch on AI in a minute. Let me just say this: 10 years ago, migration was an infrastructure project, right?
Right.
And I'm stealing a line off the bottom of the Zoom background here. Today, migration is an enterprise defining capability, right? That's exactly what it is. It's a capability. It's a business capability. And what it's doing when we intersect it with AI, it's enabling AI, because AI is about having good data, right? So it's enabling AI, it's enabling your business transformation, enabling the adoption of cloud, and then obviously future innovation. So I'm going to tackle the AI question now, and I want to just switch that a little bit, and make it a little bit different. So AI is actually changing migration, but perhaps not in the way that we're thinking about it. 10 years ago, as I said, migration projects were largely infrastructure projects. They were focused on lift and shift or moving servers. Today, when you look at migration as a business capability, it's about data. It's becoming data led. So organizations are modernizing the infrastructure. They're modernizing the infrastructure because they want to unlock AI. They want to unlock the analytics. they want to, unlock the digital transformation initiatives. So the motivation is AI. It's about the data. It's about the analytics. So AI is naturally increasing the value of the data that sits and resides out in the organization, which means when you look at the migration process, the capability that we talk about, it must be faster, it must be safer, it must take away risk, and it must be predictable, right? So there's a large bearing now on migration all of a sudden, from lift and shift and moving infrastructure to AI-led, focusing on data and an underlying business capability that gets us to that point. So if you look at business, there's some fundamentals, Rajesh. Downtime hasn't changed. Business disruption hasn't changed. Risk is still there for boards, for directors, for C-level. What has changed is the level of automation, orchestration, and intelligence that's available from OEMs and from the marketplace. And tasks that we used to think about that required weeks of planning, you need highly skilled people, highly paid individuals, lots of manual intervention, can now basically be done very, very quickly, automated and validated before cutover, such as what we talk about and what we've been talking about when we look at the tool set from Carbonite. So the conversation now is more about it's evolved from how do I move my workload to how do I move my business without interrupting it while preparing for an AI-enabled future. So if I could maybe leave with one thought, it's this: migration is no longer a high-risk IT project, right? And as I said at the beginning of the call, our migration technology has been trusted 35 years. It's battle-tested. It's evolved through multiple generations. We enable NxtGen and your partners and customers with confidence. Confidence is what it's about. It's about confidence that they can modernize without disrupting the business. They can exit legacy platforms. They can adopt AI, and they can basically, remain protected throughout the entire migration journey. It's proven, it's repeatable, it's easy, and the outcomes are predictable when we start thinking about a business capability that enables organizations to focus less on the migration itself, but more on the business opportunities that come after the migration. So that's what I wanted to close with, Rajesh. Thank you.
No, I think this is a fantastic summary, Steve, you gave in terms of understanding the landscape. Now, obviously, there are complications which are coming in terms of compliance, sovereignty of data, sovereign AI, and all that. But I think if we have this right attitude of looking at things that the things are complex, we want to use maximum technology and ensure that there won't be any disruption to the business. That is the success mantra of the migration. Thank you so much for you, Steve and Kashinath, to be part of this essential conversation. I thoroughly enjoyed this. Back to you, Sudhir.
Thank you. We also enjoyed it, Rajesh. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Rajesh. Thank you, Steve and Mr. Kashinath. It was a wonderful and insightful discussion, I must say. I particularly like the conversation around the internal muscle and how the success is being measured post migration, and especially the future tech and the way tomorrow's debt is being avoided in this AI driven world. So, after listening to them, one question for you all to think throughout this session as a food for thought is, if your organization had to migrate a critical workload tomorrow, how confident would you be in your current approach? Right? Well, with that, now let me invite Avyaya, who heads the cloud business at NxtGen, to give his perspective and showcase the playbook that he's built for migration activities at NxtGen. Right. So over to you, Avyaya.
Thank you so much, Sudhir, and thank you, for this opportunity. I think it was very good to hear, some of the leaders from our industry and some, very large customers of ours talk about their perspective on this topic, right? And I just want to quickly start off with saying that, or sort of recalling one of the points that was just said, in this discussion that, migration is not a technological sort of outcome, right? It's not a technology outcome. Today, actually, migration is a business outcome. And like Steve said, it's a business outcome that you want to do it at scale, right? So I want to talk to you a little bit about, how NxtGen does, migration, and a little bit about our managed migration. And, I'll take you through sort of this, not a model, right? But the kind of various steps you should look at and how we deliver it as an entire engine of, bringing, all of the workloads from, previous platform to a new platform, and how we do it in a reliable, repeatable, and, sort of scalable manner. Yeah. So one quick thing I want to start off with is that today, if we see more than 94% of organizations across the world use some sort of cloud, right? This is a massive number, and migration is a big chunk of this number. And it is a very sort of important piece of cloud when we talk about it. And in today's sort of climate, we see a lot of migration happening as well. An IDC survey recently, stated that more than 25% of respondents have repatriated, from public cloud back to private. And another Forrester survey has, told us that um, with the current VMware climate, there are more than 80% of respondents who are trying to um, get out of proprietary virtualization platforms, right? So migration is an extremely common topic in today's world. And, like Rajesh and Steve mentioned, it is a 30-year-old story. It's not something that is brand new. So, migrations don't really fail as such because it is a known science today. But what actually ends up happening is that they stall and they don't go as smoothly as you want them to go. And there are a few key reasons for, this to actually happen. So if I could define it into four main reasons why migrations don't go so smoothly. First one would be, unclear scope. Majority of the migration, majority of the workload of a migration, right, actually happens before the migration itself. You need to understand what are the sort of workloads, what is the business objective, why the migration is happening. And all of these need to be very well defined before we actually get into the migration process itself. Secondly, when we talk about the actual migration itself, oftentimes the partner or vendor facilitating this migration um, has certain, skills and capabilities. But what actually happens in an enterprise IT environment is that the stack comprises of a lot of different layers, and it's important to have a partner who understands various layers, right? Be it the hardware, platform, software layer, at the application level layer as well, right? So that is, you need a partner who can take full accountability, and the accountability is not fragmented in the sense that, okay, this is not in my scope, this is not in my scope. And third being cost surprises. You want a partner who can deliver this service in a predictable manner that doesn't give you surprises and doesn't have unplanned expenses, because as much as it is a business outcome, there is a financial implication to all of these conversations we have. And the fourth problem finally being that the actual final cutover, right? That's sort of the most nervous stage when we talk about a migration, that when we fully switch to this new environment, how are things going to actually play at production, and what are the sort of various problems we may face. So these are the four reasons why they do stall. And to give you a sort of solution how NxtGen does or has a solution to this, we have actually created a three-phased approach, right? So it's a very simple sort of a method that we have created that sort of looks at um, the methodology of the migration itself. Second, the tooling used to do the migration. And thirdly, the accountability as well. Just one second, I think my screen is gone. Yeah. So yeah, it is spread across discovery, design, and non-disruptive migration, right? So um, there are various points how we tackle this. So I'll just go through them one by one and tell you a little bit about how NxtGen does this entire migration service, right? So primarily, being a cloud service provider for more than 14 years in India, right? We have seen workloads that um, have scaled across platforms, across clouds, and um, from various industries and various types of workloads. So this gives us experience across platforms, and this is something that we received recognition from on a global scale from Forrester in a recent report, specifically quoting our migration strategy to be, diverse and strategic in the depth of its thought. Thirdly, the national scale at which that migration NxtGen has been able to perform not only migration but the delivery of cloud services reliably and to customers who have scaled more than 250 times with us, all using some great purpose-built tooling from our friends at OpenText and other partners that we have, all combining it into a service that is entirely sovereign and compliant, specific to the customer's regulatory environments. We do this across 5 Indian data centers that we operate across the country, and we ensure that we match the SLAs that are required, and the governance is the service is well governed by parameters that are trackable and give confidence to the entire customer. So like I was mentioning, there are 3 key phases, right? First, we want to be able to discover the workloads and discover the source environment, understand what exactly needs to be done at the source environment, and what are the sort of dependencies that need to be mapped, be it OS level or some other workload specific sort of dependencies that are there. Second phase being the actual migration itself. We need to understand what are the methods we will use to migrate, what are the engines that we will use, and the specific processes itself. And finally, when we switch over to the new environment, how do we optimize and run this at a level that it is completely reliable for the end customer. So we do this across 10 areas. I'll quickly go through the 10 areas for you. So, you get a good understanding of what is the entire process. So I'll just go from the next slide onwards. Firstly, we need to look at the strategic readiness, right? Because migration is a business outcome, we need to see it is an entire business alignment issue, right? We need to see that there are cutover windows planned, there's an entire TCO mapped, and there is an actual business case created for this migration, because cloud or IT environments in enterprises becomes something that has something that has a lot of dependencies, and doing a migration comes with all of these things that we need to map. So it becomes an entire business case that needs to get strategic approval and needs to also be fully looked at in terms of the risks that are involved. And for these risks, what are the corresponding rewards, right? If you do go through this migration, what are the benefits you will get and everything? So we ensure that this is done before the migration itself, along with a hand-in-hand sort of current state assessment that we do. So of the source environment, we understand what are the various technologies that are used, what type of workloads there are there, whether it's modern workloads or traditional workloads, what are the sort of dependencies we may have on the application side, OS side, or any even custom integrations that we need to account for, right? So these are the sort of pre-migration pieces that we do that come in the first phase of the migration process. The second phase being the actual exit and the kind of processes that we have in place to conduct this exit, right? So we want to ensure that when you are leaving your source environment, all of the dependencies such as any license renewals that you need to map, or any third-party tools or proprietary tools rather that actually bind you to that environment are taken care of in this target environment. And at the same time, you want a team that is fully capable to do this, At NxtGen, we have 100 plus certified engineers who do this entire mapping end to end and sort of hold your hand throughout the entire process to ensure that when you go from the source platform to this target platform, it is a very handheld process and it is fully managed throughout the way, right? We even sort of ensure that when you do go to the new environment, the target environment, um, there is often a requirement for having capability on new technologies or a new platform, and we take this barrier to entry away by actually providing a fully managed service. So enterprise IT teams don't really have to worry about managing this brand new environment. They can stick to their um, fundamental capability of running their source environment, or handing over the operations entirely to NxtGen. Our large operations team ensures this can happen. So before doing the migration itself, we have to sort of make sure we are ready on all the fronts, and we prepare the target environment for a migration that will go extremely smoothly. So we there are a lot of sort of pieces that we have to look at when we migrate, right? So primarily on the networking front, we need to see that the VLANs, the SDNs, everything are created on the target environment. We have to see that the correct kind of storage is being provided, be it object, file, or block storage. Obviously, we do the sizing and everything so that once we do switch over, there are no performance bottlenecks or anything like this. While at the same time, we have to map the security features like having high availability, ensuring the backup and the monitoring is all configured. Finally ensuring the application itself is ready. So this is all something we have to make sure we do for this process. And NxtGen's team actually across this entire process helps the application team of the customer to actually create an environment that is not only ready to bring in the existing application, but also map out any dependencies that may have to change on the customer side or on the application side to have a smoother and migration environment. One big piece that you have to take care of during migration, and NxtGen sort of specifically maps for, is the sort of security features that we do put in place when we are migrating. For example, be it the identity access management or the rule-based access. These are things that need to be pre-configured and configured to the business logics that the customer already has. Right? You can't. These are things that there need to be a good sort of assessment done beforehand to understand what are the various rules and sort of access policies and rule-based access that individuals and people managing the environment get. At the same time, you have your additional security components like your firewalls or web application firewalls, or your backups. All of these need to be configured. The policies need to be set specifically and in line again with the customer's source environment and their own business logic. So be it encryption as well, right? At NxtGen, we follow encryption completely in transit, in memory, and at rest as well. So these are all things NxtGen ensures that in the in the source environment, it is actually ready entirely to receive this migrating workload. While we do the migration itself, I'll just go back to the previous slide. Yeah. While we do the migration itself, one key point is that we have to ensure that we have the ability to roll back, right? Because although we have several stages of pre-assessment and sort of understanding what needs to be done, there are often times that once we do migrate, something may not have worked. And, having this capability and experience that NxtGen does, oftentimes we are able to sort of roll back, and the tools that we use facilitate this very easily, to have this automated rollback where we can sort of switch back to the source environment and ensure that nothing on production or nothing that is live currently faces any impact, right? And this is a key capability because it also almost becomes an insurance policy for us when we do this migration. And before doing this, obviously we do our testing and rollback and everything to ensure that it is fully working. But this is a key aspect that we need to account for and sort of have within this process so that we can ensure a smooth migration. Finally, we need to ensure not only on the technological side, but also in the regulatory environment, we ensure that the environment that the customer is moving to is completely compliant to the customer's existing sort of regulatory frameworks that they comply to. For example, at NxtGen, we host all our customers in completely METI empaneled data centers, and we ensure that it is a fully sovereign cloud service delivery, right? We need to ensure that a lot of customers have very specific audit trail requirements. Where are the logs being forwarded? What are the technologies being used to analyze the logs? And what are the specific sort of compliance frameworks we comply to, be it METI certain or PSI DSS. Making sure all of these are completely mapped across the environment, not only the hardware, platform, application at all layers, throughout. And finally, once the migration is done, we need to sort of in a very measured manner, decommission the source environment as well, because there may be certain dependencies that may continue. So we may want to continue the source environment for a little bit longer, but at a certain point, you want to decommission the source environment completely. So doing this exact sort of sunset plan in a very measured and optimized manner is something that NxtGen also does completely during its migration process. And finally, this entire methodology being delivered in a cost-effective and sort of predictable manner, right? Often when you're migrating out of your public clouds, you have to account for extremely dynamic components like your egress charges or the entire data being migrated from one place to the other. At NxtGen, we try and ensure that it is as predictable and transparent as possible, and that you sort of know beforehand what you are getting into, and there are no surprise sort of elements that come up. And this entire migration process is fully managed from our side. Yeah. So there are obviously various engines we can use for this migration, but one key thing to understand is that we like to believe that the engine for migration is not any one tool or any one service, right? It is actually NxtGen itself being, the engine of migration, where we're blessed to have partners and tools who we can use, and a lot of technologies across different layers of the stack to deliver this migration in a way where not only is it a continuous sort of replication that we can do, across platforms, and in a manner that it is being done live. So you don't need to sort of replicate at a stopped level. You can actually replicate live workloads and then plan your final cutover stages. And we have other sort of native tooling across our cloud platforms as well that actually allow us for direct VM discovery from one platform to another and have sort of a one-click migration, right? And these engines are all sort of used by our team that is extremely well-versed and well-oiled across 13 years and across various platforms to deliver this migration. So, when NxtGen says they have 900 plus, we have 900 plus customers, right? It is 900 plus customers who have actually been migrated from some source environment to NxtGen's target environment. So it is the most validation that you can show, right? That this has actually been done many times before, and this is something that we do on a day-to-day basis. So yeah. Finally, like I mentioned, it is delivered in a model that it is fully, cost-effective and delivered to you upfront. We don't want to give you any surprises, and not only do we not give you surprises, we want to take you to an environment like Mr. Kashinath said that we want to take you to an environment that is fully future-proof. So once you do migrate, it's not just about the migration itself, right? It's about running on a platform that is fully future-proofed. You have your services that you need. So the complementary services that NxtGen offers as a part of its cloud, be it the firewalls, the WAF, security, managed databases, or Kubernetes as a service, and even if we need to modernize applications from VMs to containers, all of this is done in a very future-proof manner, so that once you migrate, you don't have to look back. And that sort of overarches the entire 3 phases of migration that NxtGen follows. So again, to take you back to some key points mentioned by our industry experts, it is a business outcome at scale, and we want to deliver that to all of our customers while ensuring that we sort of do it in a future-proofed environment, so you don't have to look back. So that's it from me. Thank you so much. I think Sudhir can take over.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thanks, Avyaya, for the nice, insightful session. It gives a great deal of comfort to see how, in a phase-wise manner, we are able to migrate from a source to a target environment, and without impacting or the customer workloads, and with minimal downtime. This gives a lot of insights as to how we are doing it in a very systematic manner. So, as we come to the end of today's session, I'd like to thank our speakers for sharing their experiences, insights, and practical perspectives on what is often one of the most challenging aspects of enterprise transformation, that is, migration. So, today's discussion reinforced an important point. Migration is rarely a technology challenge alone. The real differentiators are planning, governance, operational readiness, and the ability to align migration decisions with business outcomes. We heard valuable perspectives on reducing downtime and disruption, modernizing the workloads, enabling hybrid and multi-cloud strategies, and building migration capabilities that can be repeated and scaled across the organization. So one theme that stood out throughout the conversation is that successful organizations don't treat migration as a one-time project. They treat it as a strategic capability that enables future innovation, agility, and resilience. So before we close, I hope you have been thinking of the question that I posed earlier. If your organization had to migrate a mission-critical workload tomorrow, how confident would you be in your current approach? If that question has sparked some reflection, I encourage you to take advantage of the migration governance assessment, which you can see on the screen, which can help you evaluate your organization's readiness and identify areas that may need attention. So you just have to scan the QR code that's visible on the screen and answer the questions. So while you do that, we'll also be sharing the session recording, the key takeaways, and your certificate of executive participation shortly. I'll just give a couple of minutes for you to answer the questions. So on behalf of NxtGen, thanking you all our attendees, our speakers, and our partners for making this conversation possible. This is exactly why we created the Essential Conversation series, to bring together enterprise leaders and technology experts to discuss what really matters. Thank you once again for joining us today. We look forward to welcoming you back for the episode 3 of the Essential Conversation. Until then, stay safe, stay curious, and keep building for the future. Have a wonderful day ahead.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.